Welcome to Face the State. I'm Ariana Bennett. Thank you for joining us. Well, after a long, hot summer, it might be easy to forget the very cold, wet winter we had last year. A long line of storms dropped feet of snow, followed by inches of rain, flooding neighborhoods and businesses and causing millions of dollars in damage. So here's a look back at those 2017 floods.
Sagittarius Drive in Reno turned into a river 1 week into the new year, leaving a mess behind for crews to clean up. It was a scene repeated all around the region following heavy rainfall and runoff. Too much for our desert storm drains.
It all just ran. It just ran wild.
For this family, it meant a backyard full of water. Thankfully, it left their home dry. But this neighborhood in Hidden Valley wasn't so lucky.
I have seen food go by, I have seen gas cans, different things, and you know, that's hazardous materials. And how long we'll be with the water, I don't know.
Flooding from Hidden Valley in January to Lemon Valley a month later left residents with a mess at best, at worst, structural damage.
When it first rained, there was so much water in here, it made the whole thing collapse.
And that water stuck around in Lemon Valley for months, keeping roads closed and residents holding their breath, worried about the snowmelt in spring and summer. Washoe County declared a state of emergency, and Governor Sandoval asked the White House to declare Nevada's flooding a major disaster, freeing up federal dollars for desperately needed repairs to roads, homes, and businesses.
Okay, so looking ahead to this coming winter, flood management officials are taking some lessons from last year and getting ready for whatever Mother Nature may throw at us. Jay Aldean with the Truckee River Flood Management Authority is here now to talk about all of that. Jay, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking.
Oh yeah, no, happy to have you. So, I mean, looking back at all that damage, I think we've had enough of separation, but it's still shocking.
Well, flooding hit us last year in ways that we hadn't really anticipated in the past. Typically, our floods are along the river and they come from California. In other words, they rain up into the mountains and all that water compounds and fills up the reservoirs and comes down, ravaging through Reno and Sparks and Washoe County area. But last year's flood didn't do that. Last year, it rained not really hard, but it rained for almost 10 to 11 weeks in a row. We got more water in volume than we've ever had, but we didn't get high peaks. So the water going through the river certainly filled the full channel, but it didn't extend out all that badly, except for that one barn burner that we had at the beginning of the year in January, which was roughly equivalent to about a 40-year storm event. You know, that's a significant rain event, but that's something that's nothing like the 97 event. The 97 event was twice that. It was so much bigger. But Lemon Valley, the irrigation ditches, and those irrigation ditches can't handle those kinds of problems. And so we had all sorts of different kinds of flooding this time.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, obviously something we've never seen before. And so obviously I think probably a good opportunity to see how our system operates, to maybe kind of like test it out, right?
Well, you know, the public works directors for Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County are all very, very aware of the problems they have in their jurisdiction. The Reno Public Works Director, John Flansburgh, is he's got problems in the irrigation ditches on the west side of Reno. We know that, and he goes and he cleans those things out. He does everything he possibly can to prepare for any kind of flooding event. And the same with Washoe County and the same with Sparks. Very, very capable individuals that run those programs. And they clean everything out to they completely clear all the culverts out, all the sand, all the debris, and they get that all flowing nice. But the problem is you can't tell where the water is going to come from. And so even though their preparations, they were very prepared last year. There was certainly no problem in the preparations done by any of these programs from the three governmental entities here. They all had it dialed in, and Mother Nature threw a curveball. And they're doing the same thing this year. They're going through, except for Washoe County is actually trying to address the issues out at Lemon Valley they've got a kind of a temporary levee that they're using to try to keep the water from going out into the to the properties there. But as far as what they did, they're doing it again this year, and they're going to do the same thing probably next year, unless we have big projects built that will convey the water. We're still going to be in the same situation. It's not going to get any better.
So were there any specific lessons to be taken from this flood event, or was it kind of just, I mean, this is unusual?
There were some. The North Valleys, for instance, Swan Lake doesn't normally have a lot of water in it. There's a sewage treatment plant that discharges to that area, but you know, there wasn't a lot of water. It filled up. It filled up all the way past where we thought the 100-year storm event was. And that means that, well, if you look at the water year, we have more water in this year than we have ever received since records have been kept.
Right.
Now, we beat the old record was 82, 83. And it, as you know, it's just a large volume of water. Well, the problem is, where's the water going to go in Lemon Valley? It can't drain up over the hill. Pumping is really not an option. I have a pumping story, but it's not the place for it. But people think that you can pump. You know, you need 1,000, maybe 4 or 5 1,000 horsepower pumps to get that water out. Those are big pumps. Those are huge pumps. They just don't get built in a very short amount of time. So what Washoe County did is they built a temporary levee to try to hold the water in so that it wouldn't flood the properties outside. And that was a lesson learned. In other words, what they need to do, and they're also studying right now, Dwayne Smith with Washoe County, who is a very, very sharp guy, is studying that right now for Washoe County. And I'm kind of on his team to help him, along with the Reno Public Works Director and the other individuals that are experts in flood protection, flood prevention in the community. And we're trying to cobble together a plan that will, we can put before the elected officials and ask them how they want us to proceed.
So moving forward to this upcoming winter, because there's not a whole lot we can do in terms of large projects because it's almost upon us, how is the community getting ready?
Well, the community needs to take thought of where they are. In other words, they need to understand that if they're in a low area and they're potentially going to flood, they need to have on-site sandbags and maybe the materials to fill the sandbags. Maybe they don't need to fill them quite yet, but they definitely need to have at least some sandbags and have enough ready. They should know how many they need in order to prevent water from going in the areas that are low areas on their property. That's not an easy thing to do because some properties are all low and you can't sandbag the whole property. Some properties you sandbag the door entrances and the garage entrances, and that keeps water from going in and ruining, public or their property. And then some individuals need to move their cars to higher ground. Folks in the commercial area have a plan. In fact, that's one of the flood preparation deals is make a plan and operate that plan and pay attention to the weather and make sure that you're watching the storms. If they say there's going to be a big one, then move your execute your plan. If it means moving your equipment to higher ground, then do that. You know, those kinds of things. So the public needs to be prepared, and if the public has any kind of culverts or any driveway culverts, that they need to clean those things out so that water will go through and not go up into their property and cause damages. Because the cities are doing that and the county is doing that as well. They take this time right now, right before winter, to basically winterize everything by cleaning everything out. Our office is on Gateway Drive, and Reno just came in and cut all the reeds and bulrushes and opened up the culvert so that the culvert will flow the water through and not flood the properties. So again, they're doing that everywhere in the city that they can.
What is your biggest concern, worst case scenario, that keeps you up late at night?
Well, the fact is, the planning storm for this community is called the arc storm. It's a term used for a storm that from anecdotal evidence occurred in the 1860s, but it was two back-to-back 100-year storm events. In other words, within a 10-day period. They had one, 10 days later they had another one. And that series of two storms caused extensive amounts of damage all through the state of California, northern Nevada, into southern Oregon, and it is the threshold for planning for major storm events. The 97 event was smaller than that. So what keeps me up is we get another 1997 event, or God forbid, an arc storm, and it comes and it basically fills up not just the Truckee Meadows, it goes all the way past Mira Loma, goes down in the Damani Ranch area, fills the whole valley up. Or even worse, they don't fix Stampede and they don't fix Boca, and it doesn't have the extra capacity it needs. And last year, you're going to like this one, last year all the reservoirs were dry. In other words, anywhere where there was storage volume, there was tons of storage volume at all the reservoirs. We have 6 of them on the Truckee River, Stampede, Boca, Donner, Independence, Tahoe itself, and Washoe Lake. All of these were dry. Yeah. They're not dry now. If we got the same storm event that we got in January now, it could almost be a 100-year event. It would push it up to a larger peak flow, and that peak flow would then fill up the valley. And for instance, I'll give you some simple stat. In 1997, there was 23,000 cubic feet a second measured at basically at 395, just east of downtown Reno. Okay, so that's 23,000. The 1997 event occurred after 4 years of drought. The reservoirs were dry. If the reservoirs hadn't have been dry, the Corps estimates it would have been 47,000 CFS, more than double the amount of flow just because the reservoirs were full. So if we get a bad one this year, we're in really bad shape.
Okay, so if we get maybe not even quite on the level that we saw last year, but even if we get some decent storms this year, how would you grade our level of preparedness to deal with that?
Well, the community has been seeking to build a Truckee River flood project that starts in Reno, goes all the way through Sparks and gets to Vista for close to 100 years. And the problem is flood control always takes the back seat to most other improvements. You got to have roads 24/7. You got to have sewage treatment and water, purveying 24/7. But flood always got the back seat, and flood costs the most. Our flood project costs about $400 million. That's a lot of money. Yeah. And people don't want to do that, especially if they get that flood amnesia. I use that word because after 3 or 4 years, the 1997 event is forgotten. I took my car into the dealer and rode to my office with 5 people. Of the 5 people, and I was one of the 5, 4 of them hadn't been living here since 2010, so they hadn't seen any flooding. It floods here?
Yeah. Okay, well that is a perfect opportunity for us to take a quick break, but sit tight. Coming up on Face the State, I will be back with Jay Aldean to talk about some solutions to this flooding problem and who would have to pay for those. Stay with us.